What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and this one is some of my early thoughts ahead of the Game Week 3 deadline. So there's some key players to talk about. I'm going to go through some notes from the weekend as well, and some quick thoughts on my team about what I might do this week. So let's get into it. So let's start with Cole Palmer, who missed West Ham in Game Week 2 with a groin problem. It can't have been that bad because he was in the 11 and only pulled out during the warm-up, but apparently he had felt that injury a few days before, so they took it as a precaution to not use him, which worked out pretty well because they won 5-1. At the moment, we don't know if he's going to be available for Game Week 3, so I wouldn't make any transfers just yet, because if he is back for Fulham at home, that's a perfectly reasonable fixture to keep him for. It's not amazing, but I certainly don't look at it and think I've got to get rid of Cole Palmer, even if he's going to play. And I know people are frustrated with him already, because he's 10.5 million, lots of hype around him, hasn't delivered yet, didn't deliver end of last season either. But I think one blank, one injury, it feels like a bit of an overreaction to now say that he's like ruining our seasons already. Like, players pick up injuries. It's frustrating for them. It's definitely frustrating for us as well. But if he's back for Fulham, he could still be a good option. So I wouldn't rush him out just yet. If he's going to miss Game Week 3, but be back after the international break, if you've got a squad where you've got a decent defender this week on your bench, or you've got an 8th attacker you can play, you could make a case to keep him. Because Brentford away in 4, Man United away in 5, and Brighton at home in 6 after the break is not all that bad. But only if you've got a decent player to play. If you don't, I think people will take this opportunity just to spread the funds around. And obviously, if he's going to miss 3, potentially 4, or even longer, then he's a very easy sell. Even I will get rid of him at that point. If you do want to spread the money around, I think it's fine to do that, right? Downgrade Palmer, then maybe put those funds in your forward line or defence instead. The only thing is, and maybe, I don't know, I'm just not seeing it here, but when I look at the midfielders that have done well, or that we would look to pick up in Game Week 3, there's no one that really stands out as like an amazing option. Like, I can find negatives with all of them. Like Semenyo at the top of the midfielder list so far this season, 21 points. I do genuinely think that he is just a good option. I think the fixtures are pretty good for Bournemouth. He always plays 90 minutes, lots of goal threat as well. I like him. So if you're going to go to Semenyo and spread the rest of the funds around, absolutely fine. After that, though, like, you look at the midfielders that have scored points. Cullen for Burnley, Brennan Johnson for Spurs, I'll talk about him a little bit later, Ndoye for Forest, Anthony for Burnley, Tavernier for Bournemouth, Dangu Utara for Brentford. I'm not saying they're bad options whatsoever, but I don't look at most of them and get excited about selling Palmer. And then if I look at let's just ignore the points for a second. If I look at the fixtures for Game Week 3 and beyond, like, obviously going to like a Cunha or an Mbeumo for Burnley at home is great, but then the next 2 fixtures are like City and Chelsea. So it's not an amazing fixture run afterwards. It's great for Game Week 3, but not beyond. And then you look at like Brentford versus Sunderland away. Maybe you go for Utara, but then Brentford's fixtures afterwards are pretty bad. I like Gordon against Leeds away, but if Isak stays, or they sign 1 or 2 new number 9s, Gordon's going to go back to left wing, and then he's got competition for his minutes with Harvey Barnes. And so all of a sudden, Gordon's probably not a 90-minute man anymore, and he might lose penalties as well. So there's just not, in my opinion at least, there's not a huge amount of exciting midfielders to bring in. If they do have a good fixture in Game Week 3, they don't necessarily have great fixtures afterwards. Like, Sarr is okay for Crystal Palace against Villa, but away to Aston Villa, it's not like amazing. So I think right now my favourite option probably is Semenyo, not just because he scored the most amount of points, but I just think a 90-minute man, that's not going to stop, and the fixtures are pretty good coming up. So I would go there and probably spread the rest of the money around. Or just, if you haven't got Reinders, for example, you could drop all the way down to him. So if Palmer's available for Game Week 3, I'd probably keep. If he's unavailable for 3, but probably back after the break, some people could make a case to keep him, but I think most people will probably look to spread the money. And if he's out long term, he's got to go. So another player people are getting frustrated with is Ollie Watkins. £9 million in FPL, 2 game weeks, 2 blanks. Not ideal. I think this is probably another player, though, that we need to just relax about a little bit. Part of the reason that we bought him in is because of how good the first 7 fixtures were. And arguably, on paper, their most difficult fixture was Game Week 1 against Newcastle. Now, Villa did not perform very well in that game, same with the Brentford match, and Watkins got hardly any chances against Newcastle. But again, it's their most difficult fixture of the first 7. It's probably okay if he blanks. Not great that he's also blanked against Brentford, but you've now still got 5 pretty good fixtures to come. Palace at home this week, Everton away in Game Week 4. Not super easy fixtures, but nothing to massively worry about. Then Sunderland away in 5, Fulham at home in 6, and Burnley at home in 7. And most people are going to want to get those Sunderland and Burnley games from Watkins. So I just wouldn't panic after 2 game weeks. that Watkins is just like forgotten to score. I'm sure the goals will come sooner rather than later. And I think for most people, he's probably a pretty good hold. The two things that I see people wanting to do with Watkins is one, upgrading to Haaland, or two, simply just selling him to like a João Pedro or a Chris Wood. On the Erling Haaland thing, completely understand it, right? Because you've got Palmer who's frustrating, you've got Watkins. You can switch Palmer to like a 5.5 or even a 5 million midfielder and then upgrade Watkins to Haaland. Like, that seems okay, but you're buying Haaland at a time where he's got Brighton away, Man United at home, Arsenal away, next three. You know, Brighton away, Man United at home, not terrible. You're probably not captaining him, right? I don't look at Haaland against Brighton away as a player you've got to bring in for captaincy. And game week 4, Man United at home, he'll probably do quite well in that fixture. But Salah's got Burnley away, so he's probably the better captain anyway. And you're not going to captain Haaland against Arsenal away. So there doesn't, to me, I think Haaland's a good option, right? He's going to score goals. I don't think anyone has any doubt about that. But I just don't get this mad rush to bring him in this week specifically. If you really wanted him, it was surely for Wolves away, Spurs at home on paper. I know he blanked against Spurs. So I don't personally get the rush for Haaland. If you're looking to go to like a João Pedro or a Chris Wood, that's a little bit more understandable, especially if you need the money to make another upgrade elsewhere. So Watkins down to João Pedro, that's 1.5 million to upgrade your midfield or defence. I get that. But if it's just Watkins to João Pedro, that I don't understand. If you don't need the money, is João Pedro that much better of an option than Watkins in a game week shootout? Like, if you could have Watkins against Crystal Palace at home or João Pedro against Fulham at home, who would you choose? I'd probably go for Watkins. So you might think that long-term João Pedro is better, but personally I would rather keep Watkins, save a transfer, and then decide what to do game week 4. And my bet is in game week 4 you won't be so keen to go to João Pedro. Chris Wood is maybe a little bit different because the fixtures are pretty nice, right? West Ham at home this week. Then it's Arsenal away in 4, not great. But then Burnley away, Sunderland at home. So as a 4-game week spell, this is pretty good. But again, Watkins versus Palace at home or Wood against West Ham at home, you could maybe argue Chris Wood is slightly better, but is it worth a transfer just for a straight swap without needing that money for other moves? I'm not so sure about that. So for people sat there with one transfer, I'd much rather roll than sell Watkins to João Pedro or Chris Wood. And again, if Chris Wood doesn't smash Watkins in game week 3, are you going to be that excited about seeing Arsenal away in game week 4? I mean, that's worse than Everton away for Watkins. So I think with lots of transfers right now, especially if you've had a bad start, people are frustrated, they want to sell players, I get it. But I just think patience is often required. And for Watkins, unless you need that money from a downgrade or you're absolutely desperate to go to Haaland, I don't see a massive need to sell him this week. So Aït-Nouri is another player that picked up an injury in game week 2, did start against Spurs, but went off around the 20th minute. Massively frustrating if you owned him, especially if you went from Frimpong game week 1 to Aït-Nouri game week 2. I do genuinely feel for you if you did, because that is peak FPL. At the moment, we don't know if he's going to be available for the Brighton game. Pepper said that he hopes he will be, so it doesn't seem like it's a big injury, but we'll have to wait until he's had scans and stuff like that. I think it was an ankle injury that he went off with. If he is available, then I think you just keep him. And it's obviously promising for his minutes because Vardiol hasn't been in the squad for the first 2 games either, so it's unlikely that he would go straight back in to the 11. So if he's fine, you keep him. If he's only going to miss game week 3, I think there's arguments to be made to keep him as well, especially if you've got 3 other defenders that look decent enough this week. Because after the break, Man United at home in 4 is fine. Arsenal away in 5, not great, but then you've got that Burnley game in game week 6. So if he's only going to miss 1 week, you could make a case to keep hold of him. If he's out longer term than that, then he's probably quite an easy sell and you just bring in a different defender instead. In terms of who to go for, I actually think it's quite difficult because if you look at game week 3 fixtures, instantly I think about Cucurella against Fulham at home, who certainly wouldn't be a bad option. But actually, when you look at Chelsea's fixtures, they're not that great, I don't think, for defensive returns longer term. Like, not terrible. And obviously, Cucurella can get you attacking returns as well. But Brentford away in 4, maybe you get a clean sheet there. Then it's Man United away. I would expect Man United to score, although to be fair, they have struggled with that in the first 2 game weeks, so maybe not. Brighton at home is okay. Then it's Liverpool in 7, then it's an away game against Forest in 8. So I quite like Cucurella. I don't think overall the fixtures are terrible, but when you look at them a bit more closely, I'm not sure there's a huge amount of clean sheets there, but he's fine. Arsenal defender I quite like for game week 4, and definitely 7 onwards, but it's not great this week against Liverpool. And Van Dijk's also a really good option from game week 4 onwards, but not great this week because he's playing Arsenal. I personally think I probably would just go for Cucurella because it's Fulham at home, or I would look at Munoz. Like Villa away, not amazing, but it's Sunderland at home in 4. The fixtures after that aren't terrible. The other player, by the way, who I keep overlooking, probably because he's just played Man City, is just to go to Porro if you don't own him. Because the fixtures pretty much, I don't know, up until game week 10 maybe, are just not that bad. Bournemouth at home, West Ham away, Brighton away, Wolves at home, Leeds away, Villa at home, Everton away. There's a few away games in there, but right now playing West Ham is not that bad. Leeds could be tricky. Everton, I don't think it's that bad of a fixture from a defensive point of view, and we know he's got attacking potential as well. If you wanted a shorter term move, just while I'm naming like every single defender under the sun, you could go for a Forest defender. Not great for game week 4, but outside of that, like I said, for Chris Wood, West Ham at home, Burnley away, Sunderland at home. Like as a short term move, you could pick him up and then maybe look to move to someone like Gabriel in game week 7 when Arsenal's fixtures get really good. So I don't personally think if you're selling Aït-Nouri, there's a standout. I don't mind Cucurella, short-term Murillo, or just maybe go to someone like Porro. I think with Van Dijk and Gabriel, you just want to leave them another week before you look to maybe pick them up. So I'd hazard a guess that Nicholas Füllkrug owners are absolutely raging. Gets subbed at half-time in game week 2 for Callum Wilson, which is not great for his minutes going forward, and he's dropped from 6 to 5.9 million. So unless you've got money in the bank, it's now more difficult to sell him in one move because there's not many great forwards priced below 6 million. I guess the first question is, do you have to sell him in game week 3? I think most people that own him will want to sell him. And then if you've got money in the bank or 2 free transfers where you can upgrade him to someone else, it's definitely something that I would consider. But there is maybe a case to be made to hold on to him, not because I think he's an amazing option against Forest away in game week 3, just that there is still a chance he will start, even though he'll almost certainly get subbed early, but hopefully this time he'll make it past the 60th minute. And after game week 3, the transfer window shuts, you're going to have more information. And of course, by not selling him, you've saved yourself a transfer as well. So it's not a case that I think he's great, you've got to keep him. Maybe it'd just be more valuable to move him on after game week 3. Once the transfer window is shut and we know exactly which players are going to be where. For example, right, Muniz at Fulham could be a good option, sub 6 million, but there's still talk about whether he's going to sign a new contract, whether he might get sold. You just don't quite know where he's going to be after the window. My guess is he will be at Fulham, but we don't know that for sure. You could look at players like Mayenda for Sunderland who have started the first 2 game weeks, but last game week the minutes came down, and if he doesn't continue to score, those minutes will probably continue to drop. He might still start, but how many minutes is he going to get week to week? I think under 6 million, there's just too much risk for players. At 6 million, you've got like Thiago at Brentford, but after Sunderland, the fixtures get a little bit rougher. You've got Barry at Everton, who started yesterday but didn't start game week 1. He got subbed around the 60th minute as well. Ideally, I think you're going up to kind of 6.5 or above. Maybe someone like Strand Larsen, who I own, who hasn't done anything so far, but actually has pretty good fixtures. Everton at home, Newcastle away, Leeds at home next 3, then Spurs away, Brighton at home, Sunderland away, Burnley at home. Actually, for 6.5 million, game weeks 3 to 9 are actually okay. The problem is, again, though, there's been lots of speculation that he might move to Newcastle. And if he does, I don't think he's such a good option because I do not for 1 second believe he will go to Newcastle and be their first choice number 9. I think they will sign someone else. There's still speculation about Visser as well. So then he becomes a bit of a problem. Now, I suspect the most transfers will be done before the weekend, before Saturday's game week 3 deadline, but they could be done afterwards. So Strand Larsen could be a great option, or he could be an absolute dud from game week 4 onwards. So you're just in a tricky position with Füllkrug where you might have to keep him just because the other options are not amazing right now in and around that price. If you're going to sell Cole Palmer to whoever, and then you're going to do Füllkrug to Chris Wood or João Pedro, you've got 2 free transfers, absolutely understand that. I would probably do that as well. But for those of you with 1 transfer, no money in the bank, I think you can make a case to keep him just to get that information and have a more certain plan about what you want to do from game week 4 onwards. But obviously there is a risk he just doesn't start this week. So take that into account when you're making your moves. But I think he will. I could be wrong though, but I think he will. So it's not often you see a 24-pointer in FPL, but that's exactly what Yuri and Timber delivered against Leeds in game week 2. In just 63 minutes, by the way, super impressive. Lots of transfers in this week. No defender has more than him, nearly 200,000 and counting. But you know what I'm going to say? There's just no need to bring him in this week. Partly because it's Liverpool away, so the chances of getting a clean sheet are very low. And of course, he's got attacking potential in his locker, as we saw, but that's going to be more difficult against Liverpool as well. So fixture-wise, I just wouldn't get him. But also, I think there's reason to be slightly concerned about the minutes for any of their fullbacks going forward. In pre-season, if you'd asked me, and I think someone did, I would have guessed that after Gabriel and Saliba, Timber will get the most minutes at right back or left back. But the fact he didn't start in game week 1, I think it's just a little bit worrying. They've got Ben White there, Calafiori, Lewis Skelly for the other side as well. They've just got so many options for the fullback positions. Timber's always going to be a slight worry unless other players go and get injured. So I still think, outside of Gabriel and Saliba, Timber will probably get the most minutes, but I don't think it's enough to spend 5.5. You can go and get Pedro Porro or Munoz, or you can spend a bit more and get Gabriel for safety. So if you owned him, I'm very jealous, right? 24 points is absolutely ridiculous, but I just do not see any reason to buy him this week. So I've just got a couple of other notes from the weekend. For Brentford, who have Sunderland away this week, Thiago got another 90 minutes. For 6 million, there is definitely potential there. Took a penalty in game week 1 as well. It does look like if they don't make any more signings, Sharda left wing, Thiago number 9, and Utara, basically the Mbermo replacement on the right, is going to be the setup. So I don't mind Thiago for 6 million if you're looking for a cheap forward. I would just say that after the Sunderland game, it could be a situation similar to Füllkrug after game week 1, where the fixtures just don't look quite so good. Chelsea at home, Fulham away, Man United at home, City at home, West Ham away, Liverpool at home. So they've got to play all of Chelsea, Man United, which might not be quite so bad, Man City and Liverpool between game weeks 4 and 9, albeit they're all at home. But for 6 million, I guess you can't expect the world. The other thing to say for anyone looking at doing early transfers, some teams do have EFL Cup games this week. So they've just played Villa, they've got Brentford have got Bournemouth in the Cup, and then they've got their game at the weekend. So just don't make any early transfers in case of injuries and stuff like that. Dango Utara is a genuine option at 6 million, sorry. I think the numbers he put out at Bournemouth are quite impressive. If he can get more minutes at Brentford and continue those numbers, he will score and assist plenty. But again, the fixture's just not great after Sunderland. Spurs, solid defensive display. We probably should think the likes of Romero, Porro, etc. are going to keep more clean sheets this season. Definitely don't write Spurs defenders off if you're looking for a new one this week. And obviously Van der Ven has started again. He's nice and cheap at 4.5. Brennan Johnson, 2 starts, 2 goals. I'm still a little bit wary about his minutes long term. We know that Spurs have been trying to buy Savinho, so they're looking for another winger. Does that mean that Brennan Johnson will continue playing and Savinho will play right and Kudus will play 10? I'm not sure if it's going to be as simple as that, because we know they're also looking to try and buy a number 10 as well, right? They were trying to get Eze. So if it's not Eze, obviously, but if a number 10 comes in and another winger, then you've got a lot more competition for Kudus and Brennan Johnson. So I think because of how well Spurs have played in the first 2, you'd assume Brennan Johnson will start again in game week 3. I just worry. Like, I know I'm quite cautious, right? But once that transfer window is shut, you just don't know what position some teams and players are going to be in. So Brennan Johnson's great. When he starts, he does get goals. We've seen that plenty of times in the Spurs shirt. I just don't think I would rush out to buy him this week. And Richarlison started again, but you've got to avoid him because at some point Solanke will come in. Right? If the performances continue, maybe Richarlison is just first choice number 9 for a long time, but it's just not worth the risk. Man City, of course, Marmoush starts after everyone sells him. This is the roller coaster you're on with Man City players. You'd probably keep him now, but you can't be surprised when he gets benched. I would say at some point when you got the spare transfer, I'd probably deal with Marmoush. But if you want to keep him this week, absolutely fine. And another 90 minutes for Ryan, as it does just look like he's going to be really good value this season. And then for Arsenal, Saka and Odegaard picked up injuries. We need to wait and see whether they're going to be available for game week 3. The first rumours going around is it's not as bad as first feared. But obviously that still means they could be out for weeks. So let's wait and see what the update is. Either way, I don't see any reason to buy Arsenal players this week. I spoke about Watkins earlier, people going to Haaland, João Pedro, Chris Wood. Some of you might want to move to Yorkresh. That makes no sense. You should have done that last week before he plays Leeds. There's no need to do it before Liverpool away. Then for Everton, it was another 90 minutes for Dewsbury Hall. So for 5 million, it does look like his minutes are going to be good longer term. And he was playing primarily in that number 10 position as well. But he's not going to get you many defensive contributions. So someone like Stack at Leeds could be a better option if you're looking for someone that cheap. But for most people, it's a case of if you started with Dewsbury Hall, probably no need to rush him out, but you're also not looking to buy him either. But basically, it was Njai right wing, who also picked up a knock and was subbed early, so we need to wait for more news on that. But Njai right wing, Grealish left wing, and then Dewsbury Hall number 10, which I think we'll see quite a lot. And Tarkowski is just a defensive contribution monster, as we knew already. First 2 games picks up those points. I will say Everton were a bit lucky not to concede against Brighton. Wasn't an ideal defensive performance, but they still walked away with the clean sheet. So fair enough on that. And then Chris Wood versus João Pedro. I will probably talk on this a little bit more in transfer tips tomorrow, but I think right now I prefer Chris Wood. You know, if Palmer's out longer term, João Pedro might take penalties, and obviously his minutes will go up in that number 10 role especially. And so I do quite like him. But Chris Wood, West Ham at home, Burnley away, Sunderland at home, 3 of the next 4. He's probably the one to get. So I just wanted to give some early thoughts about my own team ahead of Game Week 3 as well. As it stands, I'm actually quite happy with how the team looks going into Game Week 3. Like on paper, it's not that bad. Now, on paper does not always convert into FPL points, and I am sat on just 77 points from the first 2 game weeks, which is an absolute disaster. I've got Salah captain and Wirtz to go against Newcastle, so I might get a few more points in the Monday night game, but it is definitely my worst start to an FPL season ever. So there is a little bit of me worried, but then I look at the team and I just think if Palmer's fit and available, it looks absolutely fine. It's not perfect, and if I wildcarded it would look better, but you could say that any game week. Any game week where you use a wildcard, your team is always going to look a bit better. Would I make enough upgrades if I wildcarded now? Probably not. Now, don't get me wrong. If Palmer's out for game week 3 and then Wirtz picks up an injury against Newcastle and I've still got Dewsbury Hall sat there, I probably would wildcard and just have 2 free transfers afterwards to deal with any new stuff that comes up. But if there's no more injuries, I just don't see any need to do that. So just to quickly run through the team. Sanchez, Fulham at home, absolutely fine. Back 3, Abidou against Everton at home. Perfectly fine, good for defensive contributions. Porro I've already spoken about in this video. Bournemouth at home, then Nico Williams against West Ham at home, which arguably is the best fixtures to have right now in the game. Salah against Arsenal at home, not great, but he's got Burnley in game week 4. I'm definitely going to captain in that week, so he stays. Palmer I've spoke about, come back onto him in a minute. Bruno Fernandes is my captain against Burnley. Am I a little bit scared about how badly that could go? Yes. But if I'm going to take on Haaland and Salah, it's probably when they've got, you know, Arsenal at home, and then for Haaland, it's Brighton away. And look, I'd rather captain Haaland against Brighton probably than Fernandes against Burnley, but I'm not going to use multiple transfers to get Haaland in. I don't think it's worth it. I think game week 6 is the window where I really want him. Wirtz, let's see what happens tonight against Newcastle. Like, he's getting pretty close to dropping in price, but I'm not going to move him on before I've even seen him play a second game. Like, if he does really well, all of a sudden the narrative around him changes. If I hold him for Arsenal, which is not great, I've then got that Burnley game, which I keep talking about. So I'm not really in a mad rush to get rid of him either. Dewsbury Hall is just an enabler for 5 million. I'm not expecting big things. I wish he was on the bench instead. I wasn't having to play him every week. But he's basically my Reinders or my Elliot Anderson. And yes, Elliot Anderson and Reinders have done better in the first 2 weeks. But I don't know, Dewsbury Hall playing as a 10, taking some set pieces. He's going to chip in eventually with the odd goal or assist here or there. I don't think he's awful for 5 million. But I do think if I wildcarded or in a few weeks, I probably will try and relegate him to the bench more often than not and only use him when I absolutely need to. And then Watkins I'm fine with. And Strand-Larsen I also think is a good long-term option if he stays at Wolves. And unless we find out that's not happening before the deadline, there's no need to panic on him. So I think the first 11 looks fine. When I think about the players that everyone else has got, like, you know, the majority of template-owned players, if you want to call them that, Reinders, okay, again, really good value, but he's not better than Salah, Palmer, Fernandes and Wirtz in my opinion. So he's better than Dewsbury Hall, but I would need money to upgrade him. Same situation as after game week 1. Haaland, but again, the switch there for me is game week 6. And that's about it. Like, Gyökeres, fine, but I prefer Watkins this week. Like, I don't know, if I go through, let me just go through the higher-end players that I'd be worried about. Like Van de Ven, but I've got Porro. Van Dijk's playing Liverpool this week. Cucurella is fine. I've got Porro. Aït-Nouri's injured. Gabriel's got Liverpool. Wan-Bissaka, what do I care about Wan-Bissaka for? So, like, I don't know. I just look through this list. Kudus is fine, but it's not someone I'm going to panic about. Semenyo I really like. I might bring him in this week. Maybe forwards. João Pedro, Chris Wood. They look really good this week. Ekatike, if Isak doesn't sign, is also pretty good. But we're talking about 1 or 2 players that I might even be slightly concerned about. That's why I just can't... I don't know. I look at the team and think the points are awful. I just can't panic and transfer all these players out because I think they're absolutely fine for game week 3. Anyway, let's get on to Palmer. If he's out, I think I will use that opportunity to sell him even if he's back for game week 4. I just think that's something I want to do. I would love to have 2 or 3 transfers after the international break, but I don't think I'm prepared to have Palmer potentially as a risk. So I probably will look at someone like Semenyo. That gives me 3.3 million in the bank to spend. That would let me do Dewsbury Hall up to someone like Cunha. Again, a little bit worried about Man United players in general, especially after Burnley at home. But maybe just to attack a little bit, I could do something like that. and that would leave me 0.3 million in the bank, which I wouldn't really be able to use for anything right now. And then obviously I would get another transfer when I get to game week 4. So that is one option. The other option is to keep Dewsbury Hall as like an enabler, but use the 3.3 on Mark Guiu instead. That would give me 7.8 million to spend. It would upgrade my bench. So I could go for someone like Chris Wood, put him in that spot, and then Dewsbury Hall gets relegated to mostly being on the bench. It also potentially opens up more options for bench boost down the line. I still think I've kind of messed up with bench boost, and I'm probably going to have to use it after my wild card. But by improving Guiu to Dewsbury Hall that's playing 90 minutes every week at the moment, that is just better overall. So I could do something like that. I quite like that, I'll be honest, selling Palmer and putting the money up front, because I still don't mind Strand Larson and Watkins as it stands. So that's definitely something I could do. I've got my team in the My Team tool on Fantasy Football Hub. I'm going to run the AI transfers on it as well, because I've not looked at that yet this week. If you want to do yours, by the way, 50% off at the moment. Links in the description below. And if you sign up and don't win your mini, you'll get your money back. Terms and conditions apply. All links you need, as always, description below. And yeah, surprise, surprise, it wants me to do Palmer to Semenyo, which I think will be super popular this week. Mostly because Semenyo is just good, but also you get the money. Interestingly, though, does want me to do Mark Guiu out, which I've kind of looked at on my own, but wants me to get Mateta. So Mateta instead of João Pedro, Chris Wood. I'm fully on board with Mateta over João Pedro, by the way. Because I think Mateta will definitely be on penalties. And obviously he's first choice number 9. Yes, they've not got Eze, but they'll sign someone, I'm sure. So I quite like Mateta. And you get Sunderland at home in game week 4, which is quite nice. And it's maybe not the worst time to play Villa away. Do I think Mateta's better than Chris Wood? That I'm not so sure about. But that's my suggested transfers. Like I said, if you want to get yours, link below. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with my team. Is it absolutely perfect? Absolutely not. But I also do not think it's terrible whatsoever. It's just 1 or 2 players that I'd like to change. But I've got the transfers to do that if I really want to. But I could just roll into game week 4. So I'll wait and see what happens in the Monday night game between Liverpool and Newcastle. I'll wait and see what other transfers happen this week. Let some of those Carabao Cup games get out of the way. And then maybe have some more thoughts for team selection on Thursday. But right now, I could absolutely see me rolling, or I'm doing Palmer out and maybe upgrading that Mark Guiu position. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. And I'll be back tomorrow for transfer tips.